By 5:41 local time, the bridge of the lead U.S. naval vessel is already fully alert, watching, tracking, and operating inside that tense kind of silence that only exists when everyone knows the Strait of Hormuz can become hazardous in an instant. First light has only just arrived. The waterway is narrow. Commercial traffic is dense. Tankers move like floating blocks of steel through tight lanes where there is no margin for error. Then the calm is broken. CIC reports 3 fast surface contacts bearing 031 and closing. No one on the bridge wastes time with unnecessary questions. Heads turn to starboard. At first, there is only haze and the pale wash of early morning light over the water. Then the optics operator finds them. 3 low-profile hulls riding close to the surface, moving fast, very fast. No fishing gear, no commercial markings, no AIS signal. Just 3 hard wakes cutting across the water as they come down from the Iranian side of the strait. The officer of the deck steps closer to the repeater. Range, 8 nautical miles. Speed, 28 knots and rising. That changes everything. These are not local boats drifting through traffic. They are not pacing from a distance. They are driving directly into the geometry of the American formation. Ahead, the lead U.S. ship stays steady on its transit track. Astern, 2 more American warships maintain disciplined spacing. Each vessel remains locked inside the same narrow corridor of safe passage through one of the most heavily watched waterways on the planet. There is no dramatic turn, no hard rudder, no panic, only steel, speed, and procedure. "Bridge to bridge hail," the captain says. His voice is calm and low. It does not need to be louder. The radio watch sends the first call on international maritime frequencies. "Unidentified fast craft. This is a United States warship conducting lawful transit. You are closing at unsafe speed. Alter course immediately." No reply. The contacts keep coming. Inside CIC, the radar picture tightens second by second. Bearings update. Closest point of approach continues to shrink. One of the 3 boats has edged slightly left, not enough to break away, just enough to suggest coordination. Another stays on a direct line toward the lead ship's starboard bow. The third hangs wider, angling toward the gap between the first and second American ships. That is what gets everyone's attention. Not speed by itself, not proximity by itself. Formation. CPA shrinking on all 3, CIC reports. Possible intercept pattern. The captain gives a single nod. Condition 3. Man key stations, log everything. The ship's posture changes without any extra noise. Sailors move faster, but never frantically. The forward gun mount shifts a few degrees off centerline. Visible enough to send a message, restrained enough to say exactly what it needs to say. Remote optics lock in tighter. The electronic warfare team begins recording emissions. On the weather decks, watchstanders move their focus from open water to the approaching wakes, now visible even without binoculars. A second warning goes out, first in English, then again in Farsi-accented maritime phrasing, prepared for moments exactly like this. Still nothing. No reply, no course correction, no reduction in speed. At 5:44, the closest Iranian craft passes inside 6 nautical miles. Through the long-range camera, its shape sharpens. Open deck, dark-clad crew, helmets, 1 mounted system aft, another object forward that could be a launcher tube, a recoilless setup, or gear intentionally arranged to look unclear at distance. Ambiguity is part of the pressure, and everyone on the bridge knows it. Visual confirms equipped personnel topside, the optics operator says. The captain keeps his eyes forward. Do not overreact. That is the real challenge in Hormuz, not spotting danger, but reading it correctly and fast. The lead craft now throws a sharp white wake across the calm morning surface, cutting toward the destroyer's projected path instead of pacing alongside. The second Iranian boat widens to the right, as if testing whether the American ship will flinch away from the lane. The third continues to stalk the gap farther back, threatening not just one hull, but the shape of the entire formation. This is not random movement. This is deliberate pressure measured in knots and meters. Contact 1 now, 32 knots, CIC says. From the bridge windows, the crew can already see it clearly for themselves. The hull is small, but its intent is not. It is closing hard enough that every second begins to matter. In a waterway this tight, with merchant traffic nearby and U.S. warships boxed into a disciplined transit line, a small fast boat does not need advanced systems to create danger. It only needs speed, poor judgment, and 10 more seconds of bad decisions. The captain gives the next order. Prepare helo launch aft. The message is already moving to the flight deck. Tie-down crews run. Air crews shift into motion. The helicopter is not airborne yet, but the ship has entered the next phase. Warnings have failed. Presence is about to rise. At 5:46, the nearest Iranian boat crosses another invisible line. Its range is now close enough for bridge personnel to make out individual movement on deck. One man turns toward the mounted system. Another braces against the rail as the boat slams through its own wake and keeps accelerating. No one on the American bridge says much. They do not need to. Every screen says it, every wake says it, every second says it. The Strait of Hormuz has become a tightening box of water and steel, and Iran is still pressing in. At 5:47 local time, the flight deck is no longer just a deck. It is a machine in motion. Under red safety lights and pale dawn, the MH-60R Seahawk comes alive. Rotor blades begin to turn, slowly at first, then faster, beating the morning air into a hard rising thump that rolls across the stern of the trailing U.S. warship. Deck crew crouch low, arms signaling through rotor wash and the damp Gulf air. Ahead, the three American ships remain in formation, continuing through the Strait of Hormuz with nowhere to turn without turning the whole transit into chaos. On the bridge of the lead ship, the nearest Iranian fast craft is now close enough to read with the naked eye. Its bow hammers over short chop, throwing spray in twin sheets as it charges across the formation's projected path. "Helicopter lifting!" comes the call from aft. The captain answers without taking his eyes off the water ahead. "Get me eyes over all three." The Seahawk lifts clear and slides low over the wake, nose down, accelerating fast. It does not climb high. It stays low in the battle space, just above the waterline, where the crew can see the geometry exactly for what it is. And from the air, the picture looks worse. Hawk 1 has visual on all contacts, the pilot reports. They're coordinated. Inside the helicopter, the sensor operator rides the MX-10 camera across the formation below. One Iranian boat is driving toward the lead ship's starboard bow. A second is running wide, matching outside the beam as if waiting for the American ship to alter. The third is exactly where CIC feared it would be, cutting toward the seam between the second and third U.S. warships. Not random, not civilian confusion. A three-angle intercept. Hawk 1 copies mounted systems on at least two vessels, the sensor operator says. Multiple personnel topside, helmets, life vests, no visible fishing gear, no flags. The helicopter banks left and pushes forward, crossing a beam of the lead American ship before angling toward the nearest Iranian craft. From below, the Seahawk is unmistakable now. Gray fuselage, U.S. markings, sensors staring straight down. A warning without a shot fired. The aircrew sends the first airborne call. "Iranian fast craft, this is a United States Navy helicopter. You are operating unsafely near coalition warships conducting lawful transit. Alter course now." The warning goes out in English, then again in maritime Farsi phrasing. No answer. The nearest Iranian boat actually increases speed. On the bridge, the officer of the deck watches the range tick down, 5,000 yards. The captain says nothing. He does not have to. The ship is already speaking for him. The forward gun mount remains trained just off-center. CIWS is powered and tracking. Electronic warfare teams continue collecting every radar sweep, every transmission, every signal flicker coming off the boats and the shoreline beyond them. Then the wider picture tightens again. EW reports new emission from North Shore, CIC says. Low-power surface search radar bearing consistent with Iranian coast. Another voice follows at once. Additional surface contact farther north, larger than the fast craft, still outside engagement zone. That matters, because now the three small boats ahead are no longer the whole problem. They are simply the part moving fastest. Below, the strait keeps getting more crowded as sunrise builds. A tanker to port continues southbound, heavy, slow, with little room to maneuver. A smaller commercial vessel farther ahead begins edging uncertainly inside the lane, likely seeing the wakes, hearing the radio calls, and realizing too late that military traffic is compressing around it. This is how incidents begin, not with missiles first, but with compression, noise, misread distance, bad timing. "Hawk 1, make a show pass," the captain orders. The Seahawk responds immediately. The pilot drops lower, skimming across the formation's forward quarter before swinging toward the lead Iranian craft. Rotor wash hammers the water flat. The helicopter does not pass directly overhead. It does not provoke. It establishes control. From inside the cabin, the crew can now see more. One crewman on the Iranian boat looks up and raises binoculars. Another stands behind the mounted system, not fully manning it, but not stepping away either. The line between caution and escalation is getting thinner by the second. The helicopter repeats the warning. "Alter course immediately. You are creating risk of collision." Still nothing. Then, at 5:51, the second Iranian craft makes the move that changes the mood on every American ship in the formation. Instead of staying outside the beam, it cuts sharply inward, crossing into water already crowded by commercial traffic and the lead warship's safety envelope. Its bow throws up heavy spray as it slices across the edge of a tanker's wake, bouncing once before correcting. On the bridge, one watchstander says what everyone is already thinking. They're trying to force the lane. Not sink a ship, not fire first. Force hesitation, force a turn. force the American formation to blink, on camera and on radar. But the U.S. ships do not blink. They hold course, they hold spacing, they hold the lane. The Seahawk pulls into a tight orbit, and the sensor operator zooms in farther. Bridge, be advised. Multiple individuals on lead craft moving near forward mount. Possible crew preparing equipment posture. That lands hard. The captain picks up the sound-powered phone and gives the next order in the same flat tone he has used all morning. Advise all ships. Force protection posture is elevated. No one fires unless I say or hostile intent becomes unmistakable. At 5:53, the nearest Iranian boat is now so close that individual faces are visible through magnified optics. The second boat is cutting across rough water near the merchant track. The third is still pressing the gap farther back. 3 American warships, 3 Iranian fast craft, civilian ships all around them, coastal radar active behind them. And above it all, 1 Navy helicopter circling low, watching the entire picture tighten. The strait is getting smaller by the second. At 5:54 local time, the line between harassment and collision starts to vanish. The lead Iranian fast craft is no longer pacing, no longer posturing from a safe angle. It is driving directly across the projected bow track of the lead U.S. warship fast enough that every watchstander on the bridge can see the danger without needing a screen. Contact 1 crossing left to right, CIC reports. CPA collapsing. Then the numbers come quickly. 2,000 yards, 1,700. Contact still accelerating. No one shouts. That is what makes it worse. The calm means the risk is real enough that nobody wants noise in the chain of command. Ahead, the Iranian boat slams through the chop and throws a wall of white water behind it. It is tiny compared with the American destroyer closing behind a steel bow and decades of procedure. But size is irrelevant out here. Geometry matters. Timing matters. 1 fast craft in the wrong water at the wrong second can force a warship to choose between collision, humiliation, or escalation. The officer of the deck keeps his eyes on the contact. Helm, stand by. Not execute. Stand by. Because the first American rule in a moment like this is simple. Do not be the one who breaks formation unless you absolutely must. Overhead, the Seahawk crew sees the same picture from above and says it first. Hawk 1 to lead warship. Contact 1 is cutting hard across your bow. Unsafe. Repeat, unsafe. Possible deliberate bow cross. The helicopter banks tighter. Rotor wash tears at the surface. Cameras are locked onto the Iranian boat now, zoomed in close enough to show every man aboard. 1 at the helm, 1 crouched behind the center console, 1 aft at the mounted system, another near the bow, bracing with 1 hand while reaching toward a rail-mounted tube or launcher rack that still cannot be clearly identified. The pilot keys the mic again. Iranian fast craft, alter course now. Alter course immediately. No answer. At 5:55, the American destroyer makes the smallest correction possible. Not a brake, not a dodge. Just enough rudder to preserve the bare minimum margin of safety while holding the transit lane and protecting the ship's stern. It is subtle, disciplined, almost invisible to anyone not reading the waterline or the repeater heading. But the fact that it happens at all tells the bridge everything. This is no longer routine shadowing. This is forced maneuver. Contact 1 has entered safety envelope, CIC says. That changes the ship's posture completely. On the forward decks, gun crews lock in harder. The 5-inch mount remains off-axis, controlled, and deliberate, but every sailor at a key station feels the same shift. Sensors and optics keep pulling in more detail. Then, from the electronic warfare space, a new update cuts through. Possible targeting behavior from Contact 2. Off the starboard side, the second Iranian craft has swung closer, and now appears to be cueing not the lead warship, but the helicopter. It is not a sustained fire control lock. Not yet. But it is enough of a directed electro-optical or radar cue that nobody ignores it. Hawk 1 copies possible sensor paint from second craft, the aircrew says. No lock tone, behavior consistent with tracking. That is the moment the air above the water changes. Until now, the danger has lived mostly in hulls, wakes, angles, and distance. Now, it is beginning to feel like a systems problem. The captain gives the next order in the same cold tone. CRAM track only. CIWS track only. Small caliber teams up. No firing without hostile act or unmistakable hostile intent. Across the ship, systems become more alert. Not loud, not dramatic, just ready. The CIWS mounts follow with tiny, almost insect-like corrections. The CRAM launcher stays steady but alert, tied into the wider defensive net. On the weather decks, force protection teams settle behind their positions with strict arcs and clear rules. No one wants a trigger pulled too early in the Strait of Hormuz. No one wants one pulled too late either. Then the second Iranian boat makes its own mistake. Trying to press inward on the formation while also avoiding the wake of a slow-moving commercial tanker to port, it cuts into rough water at the wrong angle. The bow rises hard, slams down even harder, and the entire craft yaws sideways for a split second. From above, the Seahawk catches the moment cleanly. Spray erupts. One crewman stumbles. The mounted system swings offline. The boat recovers, but not elegantly. That wobble matters. It proves what every American sailor out there already suspects. The Iranians are pushing right at the edge of control. And in congested water, at speed, on a morning like this, the edge of control is where people die. Hawk 1. They almost lost it, the sensor operator says. Lead and second craft both operating aggressively. Formation is unstable. Behind the lead ship, the third U.S. warship reports the other half of the problem. Contact 3 still pressing the gap between second and third ships. No crossing attempt yet. Holding pressure. Now the picture is complete. One Iranian craft has forced a near bow cross on the lead ship. A second has shown possible tracking behavior toward the helicopter and nearly lost control in merchant traffic. A third is still trying to break the shape of the American line from the rear. This is the peak. This is the moment when every American system is watching, every watch team is recording, and every Iranian crewman is one bad decision away from turning a transit into an incident that could ignite half the region before breakfast. The Seahawk pilot makes the call. Request low show of force pass. Approved instantly. The helicopter drops lower than before, angling across the forward line of the nearest Iranian craft. Not overhead. Not reckless, but close enough that rotor wash smashes the water flat in front of its bow. Spray lashes across the small boat. The crew flinches. One ducks, another grabs the rail. The mounted system swings again, then steadies. And for the first time all morning, the lead Iranian craft hesitates. Not much, just enough. Its wake shortens. Its bow angle loosens, its speed bleeds off by a few knots. On the bridge of the lead U.S. warship, nobody celebrates. Nobody says a word they do not need to say, because farther north, through haze and morning light, another larger contact is still moving, and the Americans still do not know whether Iran is finished pressing or simply changing the shape of the pressure. At 5:58 local time, the first real sign of hesitation finally comes from the Iranian side. It is subtle, almost invisible unless you're watching through stabilized optics or reading wake length through salt haze and dawn glare. But on the bridge of the lead U.S. warship, they see it immediately. Contact 1 speed decreasing. No one reacts outwardly. The captain does not smile. The officer of the deck does not relax. In CEC, nobody says the phrase backing down, because in the Strait of Hormuz, nobody trusts a pause until it lasts long enough to become a pattern. Still, the change is real. The lead Iranian fast craft, the one that forced the bow cross and drove the formation closest to a collision, is no longer charging at the same angle. Its wake is shorter. Its bow is no longer knifing straight across the destroyer's projected path. Instead, it is starting the kind of shallow outward drift that gives its crew deniability while giving the American ships what they need most: space ahead of the formation. The MH-60R remains in orbit, nose slightly down, sensors locked. The pilot keeps the aircraft far enough forward to dominate the visual picture without turning presence into provocation. Below, the sea lane is still crowded with merchant traffic. A tanker continues southbound off the American port side, heavy and indifferent. A smaller commercial vessel ahead has finally cleared the worst of the compression. The most dangerous minutes have passed, but only barely. Hawk 1 confirms contact 1 opening angle. 2 degrees, now 4, the pilot reports. Contact no longer holding direct intercept geometry. That is the phrase the bridge has been waiting for. Not retreat, not surrender. No longer holding intercept geometry. It means the American formation is beginning to reclaim the lane. The second Iranian craft is slower to accept it. It stays farther out to starboard, still trying to look aggressive, still pacing in a wide arc as if it can preserve the appearance of control. But appearance is all it has left. The moment it lost clean water and nearly skipped sideways in merchant traffic, its leverage dropped. It can still harass, it can still crowd, but it can no longer force the American lead into another meaningful correction without risking a collision of its own. Contact 2 holding outside immediate safety envelope, CIC says. No confirmed lock, no further tightening. The third craft, the one that spent the entire encounter trying to split the seam between the second and third U.S. warships, finally begins losing its own geometry. The reason is simple. The American ships never broke line. That matters more than speed, more than noise, more than intimidation. The U.S. formation did not fragment. It did not turn into 3 separate problems. It remained one controlled transit. And that is exactly why the Iranian intercept begins to fail. At 6:01, the second U.S. warship reports the gap astern widening by another few hundred yards. The third ship confirms the same. The Iranian boat trying to pressure the seam has run out of angles. It can continue pacing near the edge, but pacing is not intercepting. Pressuring is not controlling. One by one, the tactical options in front of the Iranian crews are disappearing. The Seahawk makes another deliberate pass, this one wider and slower. Not because the threat is over, but because the Americans want every lens, every camera, every crewman on those boats to understand the truth of the moment. They are being watched from above, tracked from 3 hulls below, and recorded by multiple systems at once. If they push back in now, the record will be clean, precise, and complete. Inside the cabin, the sensor operator zooms in on the lead craft. The details are sharp now, water sheeting off the hull, a crewman near the mounted system no longer braced in a firing posture, another looking aft instead of forward. The body language has changed. Even at distance, discipline can read fear. Bridge, Hawk 1, deck crews on Contact 1 are pulling away from the weapons station. That is logged immediately. The captain on the lead ship says only 4 words. Maintain pressure, hold course. And that is the American answer. No chase, no dramatic turn toward the Iranian boats, no attempt to punish movement that is already starting to unravel. Just professional pressure, forward motion, formation discipline. At 6:03, the first radio transmission from the Iranian side finally comes through, weak and clipped over open bridge-to-bridge frequencies. American warship, you are near Iranian patrol area, adjust heading to starboard. It comes too late to matter. The response from the lead U.S. warship is immediate, calm, and flat. Iranian fastcraft, this is a United States warship conducting lawful transit in international waters. Your unsafe maneuvers are being recorded. Remain clear. No anger, no debate, no extra words. Just the lane, just the record, just the ship continuing exactly where it was already going. The lead Iranian craft drops off another few knots, then another. Its bow turns a little farther away. The second craft mirrors the move a few minutes later, drifting outward to preserve pride more than position. The third, now well astern, finally stops trying to pressure the gap and settles into a loose trail. What had looked like a coordinated 3-angle intercept less than 10 minutes earlier now looks like 3 separate boats trying not to be the last one still pressing. That is how encounters like this end when one side keeps control. Not with a dramatic retreat, but with geometry collapsing in real time. On the bridge of the American lead ship, the tension does not disappear. It drains slowly the way seawater runs off steel after a wave breaks over the bow. Watchstanders still track every heading change. The captain still watches the larger northern contact that never fully committed. CIC still logs emissions from shore. Nothing about Hormuz allows relief to arrive all at once, but the worst of it is over now. The lane is open again. The formation is intact. And by 6:06 local time, the 3 U.S. warships are no longer being intercepted. They are simply continuing transit exactly as planned, while the Iranian boats fall farther astern, still visible, still equipped, but no longer in control of the encounter. By 6:08 local time, the Strait of Hormuz looks almost normal again. Almost. The 3 U.S. warships remain in formation, moving at steady transit speed, cutting a disciplined path through one of the narrowest and most dangerous waterways on Earth. Ahead, the channel begins to open by degrees. Astern, the Iranian fastcraft remain on the screens, but the shape of the encounter has changed completely. They are no longer driving the geometry, no longer forcing decisions, no longer inside the American safety envelope. They are behind it. On the bridge of the lead warship, nobody mistakes that for victory in the loud sense. There is no cheering, no relieved laughter, just a quiet return to the rhythm of a ship that never actually stopped doing its job. Contact 1 now 6,000 yards and opening. Contact 2 pacing wide starboard quarter. Contact 3 falling back astern of the second ship. Each update is logged. Time, range, bearing, course change, every unsafe approach, every ignored hail, every near crossing, every moment the line tightened and then opened again. Because in a place like this, the first battle is not always fought with missiles. Sometimes it is fought with memory. Above the formation, the MH-60R Seahawk makes one final orbit. Wider now, calmer but still precise. The pilot keeps the aircraft low enough to dominate the visual picture and high enough to preserve room to maneuver. Inside the cabin, the sensor operator makes one last pass across the 3 Iranian boats. Their wakes are shorter now. Their posture is different. No more aggressive crossing angles. No more attempt to split the seam between ships. One mounted system remains visible but unattended. Another crewman has removed his helmet. Small details, but they matter. Pressure looks different when it is rising. It looks different when it has failed. Hawk 1 to all ships. Iranian contacts are no longer maneuvering for intercept. Recommend maintain transit. Continue track. The recommendation is almost unnecessary. The American formation has been doing exactly that the entire time. And that is the point. Iran tried to break the lane without firing a shot. It tried to create hesitation. It tried to force one American ship to turn sharply, then another, until a lawful transit looked uncertain or compromised from the outside. But U.S. Navy ships are built around something more durable than steel and radar, procedure, spacing, and trust between bridges. The lead warship never sprinted out of the lane. The second never overcorrected. The third never drifted loose in the rear. CIC stayed linked. Bridges stayed calm. Defensive systems stayed ready, but controlled. The helicopter gave the formation eyes where hull-mounted optics could not. And together, that discipline denied the Iranian boats the one thing they needed most: a break in the line. At 6:11, the lead Iranian craft finally turns far enough away that there is no ambiguity left. Not a tactical drift, not a shallow feint. Real separation. The second follows shortly after, widening its starboard arc and sliding into a parallel course that says everything without admitting anything. The third trails off with the least dignity of all, still visible on the radar repeater, but now reduced to what it should have been from the start: a spectator with an engine. The captain on the lead U.S. warship watches the updated track picture for a long moment before speaking. Secure elevated posture in phases. Keep all contacts under observation. That is as close as anyone gets to celebration. Below decks, the process begins exactly the way it should. Not all at once, not sloppily. Key stations remain manned while the tactical picture is reviewed. CIC continues recording shoreline emissions. Electronic warfare technicians label data captures. Radio logs are checked against timestamps. Optical footage from the bridge and the Seahawk is backed up. Each near approach is matched to exact range, heading, and rate of closure. If anyone asks later who pushed, who held, who crossed what line, the answer will not depend on opinion. It will depend on footage. At 6:14, the Seahawk receives recovery instructions and turns back toward the stern of the trailing warship. The flight deck crew is already in position, jerseys bright against gray steel, hands ready, body language steady. The helicopter approaches over the wake, eases down through its own rotor wash, and settles onto the deck with the same control the formation showed all morning. Another system secured, another phase complete. Out on the water, the three U.S. warships continue northbound, bows rising and falling in the early light, their wakes long and clean behind them. The Iranian boats are still there, but smaller now. Dark specks against the brightening sea. Their intercept is over. Their pressure has failed. And the transit they tried to disrupt is still moving forward exactly where it was always meant to go. No shot was fired, no missile left a rail, no hull was struck, and yet the message could not be clearer. Iran came in fast, close, and deliberate. 3 American warships answered with spacing, steel, sensors, and discipline. They never lost the lane, they never lost formation, and they never handed away control of the intercept. By the time the sun is fully up over Hormuz, the encounter is already becoming what the U.S. Navy does best with dangerous mornings at sea: a completed transit, a finished log, and a lesson captured in full.